Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me today to learn about the Preservation League's Preserve New York Arts and Culture Grant Program. I see that people are still signing on to the webinar, so I'll give you another few moments. Before we begin, I just want to point out that if you have any questions during the webinar, please drop them into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And feel free to put questions in there anytime. I will address the questions at the end, though, to keep things running smoothly. If you have made your way to this webinar today and are not familiar with the Preservation League of New York State, we are the statewide nonprofit working for historic preservation since 1974. The Preservation League works through a number of engaging programs and grants to assist people all across the state to use historic preservation for the good of their communities. We provide grants that help jumpstart preservation projects. We advocate for preservation at the local, state, and national level. We provide technical assistance, so you can contact us through our website, call us on the phone, or email, and we can help you with your preservation dilemmas. We collaborate with local colleagues across the state. We value our relationships with our colleagues, Preservation Buffalo Niagara Arch up in the Adirondacks, Preservation Long Island, and everywhere in between. We award excellence in historic preservation once a year, recognizing the projects, people, and organizations behind excellent preservation projects across the state. We draw attention to at-risk historic sites through our 7 to Save program. Every 2 years, we invite nominations for that. And also, I hope you will check out our engaging programs on our website, from the Future of Preservation webinar series, highlighting the preservation trades, our preservation book club, lots of ways to get involved and to learn about preservation at all different levels. Today, we're here to talk about grants. You may be familiar with our grant programs, but if not, we are going to go through and talk about how they're shaping up for 2026. Our regrant programs are a partnership with the New York State Council on the Arts and the Preservation League of New York State. We enjoy support from the Maurice D. Henchy Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area for projects occurring in the Hudson River Valley Greenway. And for years, we have enjoyed a partnership with the Robert David Lyon Gardner Foundation. Now this year, we get to reapply for support from them. So fingers crossed in the future, we'll enjoy that partnership. It's been wonderful to see the work on Long Island that they've helped make possible. But never fear, we have plenty of funds from the New York State Council on the Arts and the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area. So we invite applications from all across the state. So you may be familiar with, there we go. Oh, look at the fancy stuff happening on my screen. Okay, you may be familiar with our grant programs as they have been run for many years. So since 1993, we've had Preserve New York grants, and those were meant to fund pre-construction studies for public buildings. And then the technical assistance grants came around in 2012, another partnership with NYSCA, focusing on arts and cultural organizations and their historic buildings. And over the years, these two programs have become more and more similar to one another. And so we've decided to simplify things and offer them under one umbrella, the Preserve New York Arts and Culture support for pre-construction studies. And that incorporates the projects that we would fund through TAG and through Preserve New York, all under one umbrella. So that is the grant round that's open now. And then later in the year, we'll focus on support for arts-based community preservation projects. And those are the historic resources surveys and the National Register nomination work. So we'll be inviting applications for that later in the year. So we're focusing on building studies for now. We'll get started on talking about those. Uh, Eligible applicants for support for pre-construction studies are 501c3 nonprofit arts and cultural organizations only. So we're talking about museums, historical societies, arts groups, theaters, etc. The applicant needs to either own its building or have a long-term lease, and the owner of the building can be a 501c3 organization or a municipality. So you notice we're not inviting municipalities to apply at this time. However, if there is a municipally owned building that is leased by an arts group, then the arts group is welcome to apply. And we always encourage those entities to work together on the application, but the applicant should be the 501c3 organization. Keep in mind that if you have any prior grants with us, whether a TAG grant, a Preserve New York grant, or a Preservation Opportunity Fund grant, those grants need to be closed before you can apply for this round. Oh, look at that. So much fancy stuff. Okay. So the buildings that are eligible, we focus on historic buildings that have an arts and cultural use. So your building should have a primary arts and cultural use. The building is required to be at least 50 years old under most circumstances. You're not required to have your building registered on the National Register of Historic Places, although keep in mind that when we're evaluating your grant applications, the historic nature of the resource will come into play. And we'll talk about that later when we talk about how we evaluate your grant applications. So building needs to be at least 50 years old and used primarily for arts and culture. It needs to be open to the public. So the purpose of these grants is to provide access to the public to the arts. So we want to see buildings that are in active use, or if they're not in active use at the moment due to condition concerns, then you need to have some sort of programming going on somewhere, whether online or in another location. But there should be solid plans in place to resume your programming in that historic building. As I mentioned before, the owner of your building needs to be a 501c3 nonprofit or a municipality. We cannot, under any circumstances, fund privately owned buildings. So if you are leasing from an LLC or a private owner, then we cannot fund anything to do with that building. If your building is owned by New York State or part of a state park, we cannot fund that either. We are prohibited from funding New York State-owned properties. So, pretty straightforward ownership, applicant. And again, if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A and we'll talk about that in a bit. So we have two different kinds of studies that we fund under support for pre-construction studies. There are the grants for small projects, up to $10,000. These are the projects that we previously funded under TAG. So we all love the TAG grant program, and it still lives on just under a different name. So these are the small projects like accessibility studies, engineering structural analyses, limited condition assessments, MEP analysis, and keep in mind that mechanical, electrical, and plumbing is included in that, but also, is fire protection, fire alarm, and security analysis as well. So keep in mind that this grant funds the studies. It does not fund, wheelchair ramps. It doesn't fund HVAC systems themselves or security systems, fire suppression systems. It funds the studies that help you figure out exactly how to make those things happen in your historic building, because as we all know, historic buildings have unique needs and we have to be careful with them. So these studies are important for laying the groundwork to your repairs and rehabilitation projects for your historic building. Energy efficiency studies can also take a look at the way that you are heating your building and try to make things more efficient. So HVAC studies may fall under that. and then specialized conservation studies. So we're going to have examples of all of these coming up. Now, our other arm of this grant program funds large comprehensive studies, and these are to precede major capital projects, reinterpretation projects, things like that. So we're talking about building condition reports, historic structure reports, and cultural landscape reports. So as you can see, nothing has changed with the types of projects that we fund here. They're just all under PNY now. So let's take a look at some of the small studies that we fund through Preserve New York Arts and Culture grants. Accessibility studies are a way to get an idea of how to make your building more accessible to the public, and usually focuses on eliminating barriers to entry to people with mobility issues. The example we have on our screen is the Rare Center for Immigrant Culture and History in Kingston. And their building, it's a little hard to tell, but it's built on a slope. Getting into the building can be difficult for people to navigate as there are a lot of stairs. And then getting down into the bakery itself, and you can see the picture on the right shows the baking room. And in order to do tours, they really want to make it easy for people to get around that building. It's not an easy problem to figure out. So they have a preservation architect working to figure out the accessibility needs in this building and to address them. And I might add, the whole point of this is to address them in a way that will preserve the historic integrity of the building. Engineering structural analyses are small studies that look specifically at the supporting structure of a building. So if you have wonky floors or a wall that's bowing out, if you suspect that something's going on with your foundation or your flooring system, then this would be a good study to pursue. Under engineering and structural analyses, we've also funded studies of bell towers. So old churches and their heavy bells. Sometimes you start to wonder if that bell's going to come crashing through the ceiling. You don't want that to happen. So a structural analysis of the bell tower is a perfectly legitimate project as well. These are usually performed by a structural engineer, but we really want to have someone with a preservation background doing these studies. So sometimes it's a team of preservation architect and engineer working together. Limited condition assessments are funded up to $10,000. I mentioned that we have upped that grant award a couple of times in the last couple of years. Last year, the maximum award was $7,500, but we've gotten some feedback and we realize costs are rising. So up to $10,000 for a limited condition assessment. The intention of a limited condition assessment is to look at one particularly concerning problem with your building. In this case, the 1890 house in Cortland got their very first TAG grant last year, so thrilled, to look at, well, I'm not thrilled about the water infiltration that they're facing, but this TAG grant will help them address that. So as a result of their TAG grant, they are looking at the windows in the house and the needs to repair and restore those windows. They have a lot of windows, so it's going to be a long haul, but they've got a good start on things. Because, you know, water infiltration isn't always through the roof. Sometimes it's through the masonry. So they also had a look at the masonry. So the particular problem here was water infiltration. But the entire building was looked at because you never know where that water's coming from until you have a professional come in and assess it. And that's exactly what they did. So congratulations to them. They're off and running to secure their historic building for many years to come. Another example of a limited condition assessment is at the Cuyahoga Museum of History and Art in Auburn. They have a decorative wrought iron fence. And this fence is listed along with their building on the National Register of Historic Places as a defining feature of the property. So it's an important feature of this property that they want to see preserved. And as metal tends to do, it's starting to rust and fall apart. So they needed to have a specialized look at this fence to see what it would take to preserve it. So a TAG grant helped with that. So it was a specific concern with a specific area of their property. All right, so the MEP analysis, that stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing analysis. As I mentioned, it can also include studies for fire protection, installation, fire alarm, and security analyses. So we're looking at ways to solve these problems within historic buildings with this grant. Safe Harbors of the Hudson in Orange County got a TAG grant a couple years back to look at some conditions within their Ritz Theater and how to upgrade those systems. Specialized conservation studies are kind of a special sort of thing all by themselves. So this encompasses the kinds of studies that require a specialist in a certain material or aspect of your building. So I've highlighted here on the screen 2 historic paint analysis projects that we funded through TAG to take a look at painted surfaces and how to preserve and, if necessary, conserve them. So the house, the picture on the left is in Cazenovia, New York, and this was an artist house and studio for it's the Dorothy Reister House and Studio. And she had painted every surface with all kinds of different paints. The effect is beautiful, but the conservation concerns are big. So the organization got a TAG grant to help them plan for the care of those painted surfaces over time. And then on the right, you see the Hudson River Museum of Westchester. They got a TAG grant just last year from us to take a look at their painted ceilings. They're having some issues with some paint peeling. And more than likely, this analysis is going to uncover the reason that the paint is peeling and also make recommendations for how to repair those painted ceilings. Other examples of specialized conservation studies include hazmat remediation studies. So that requires a specialist in hazardous materials to come in and determine whether your repair and rehabilitation projects are going to encounter issues with hazardous materials in your historic building. It helps you deal with those things before you move on to your repairs. And again, this does not fund the actual hazmat remediation itself. It's the study. Is it there? Do we have lead paint? Do we have asbestos? Do we have mold? How do we deal with these issues? And it gives you the guidance you need to get those issues dealt with and out of the way so you can continue with your project. Acoustics analysis too for performing arts centers. Sometimes the acoustics in an adaptively reused building are not the greatest. And so figuring out how to remediate that while preserving the historic integrity of your building is important. We have funded that. Historic stencil conservation analysis, much like the paint analysis that you see on your screen. Also masonry mortars. So it's important to choose the correct mortar when you're doing a repointing project on a historic building. Old brick is different than new brick, and therefore old mortar is different than new mortar. And you want to make sure that the correct mortar is chosen so that you don't damage that old brick. So this pays for a specialist to come in and figure out what kind of mortar you need for your particular needs. LiDAR scans, these are 3D scans of buildings that help you see the interstitial spaces in your building, especially with buildings that have complicated architectural histories that have been built onto and changed over time. This can help you understand those changes and plan for your rehabilitation projects around that. Other projects too are considered on a case-by-case basis according to our grant guidelines. So if you have some sort of study in mind that I haven't talked about here, you can always get a hold of me and we can talk about it. But suffice it to say that a specialized conservation study helps you preserve your building and takes a look at those aspects of your building that require a specialist aside from a preservation architect or engineer. All right, so Now let's talk about the big comprehensive studies that we fund under Preserve New York. We have funded these all along. So these are your typical Preserve New York projects, such as building condition reports, historic structure reports, and cultural landscape reports. So a building condition report is a comprehensive overall look at the health of your building, top to bottom, inside and out, identifying repair needs, helping you set up a maintenance schedule, and helping create a long-term preservation plan for your building. On your screen is Wethersfield in Dutchess County, and they got their very first Preserve New York grant in 2025. So congratulations to them. This will help them preserve that big, beautiful structure that they have and keep it open and available to the public. If you haven't been, they also have formal gardens. It's a wonderful place to visit. So these building condition reports can help set the stage for large capital projects, major repair and rehabilitation projects, changes to the use of space within your building, things like that. A building condition study, our building condition report can also look at some of those things that we cover separately in TAG. So for instance, if accessibility was an issue here at Wethersfield, I don't think it is, but if it was, recommendations for improving that could be included in their building condition report. So there's a lot of flexibility. These reports are customizable depending on the needs of the organization and the building. You can also receive some fundraising guidance as a result of these studies. So that's something we'll talk a little bit about later. But these preservation planning grants tend to lay the groundwork for successful fundraising for the capital project as well. So something to keep in mind. Preservation planning is important, not just for the building, but for your organization, and helps you succeed in what you're looking to do through preserving your building. Historic structure report. Now, I've encountered a lot of misunderstanding with this name. So historic structure report is the same as a building condition report, except that it includes research about the building's background, its architectural history, its occupant and owner history, its use history. It's just as thorough as a building condition report regarding the physical condition of the building. It looks at existing conditions, makes recommendations for repairs and rehabilitation. It's customizable, just like a building condition report. If you're looking to reinterpret the spaces within your building or do major repair work, then this is a good place to start. A historic structure report is particularly important for buildings that are interpreted to the public. So a building with a rich history that is part of your mission to interpret through tours or through programs, then a historic structure report can help you fill in the gaps of your knowledge of that building and the people who lived there and worked there, and bring those stories out in your interpretation. We've funded a number of these that either start major projects or come along the way. Some organizations get a TAG grant and the consultant says, what you really need is a historic structure report. So sometimes they're the starting point and sometimes they're the midpoint. But if you haven't had a historic structure report and you're not sure about the condition or really the history of your building, this is a good report to have. Looking at the photo here, I just wanted to highlight this project. Through Preserve New York, we funded a historic structure report for Historic Albany Foundation, our colleagues in Albany, for 48 Hudson. This is an early Dutch building. It's one of the very few urban Dutch buildings remaining in the United States, and I think it's the only one that's a timber frame building. So it's got all kinds of historic significance. It is a lone survivor in a wasteland of urban renewal. So it sits there all alone, just waiting to be discovered and taken care of. Historic Albany Foundation has done an amazing job of planning and carrying out the restoration of this building. So for years, there was a graphic on the front of the building showing the original shape and look of the building, and that's what they were aspiring to. So only 6 years ago, they got their Preserve New York grant for a historic structure report. This looked at what kind of condition this building was in underneath the layers that had been built onto it over the years, and to look at the feasibility of restoring it. So looking at its condition, creating a plan, a step-by-step plan for fundraising and doing the rehabilitation. Wonder how this turned out. Well, I had to share. They have recently completed or almost completed the restoration of 48 Hudson, the Van Ooststrand Radliff House. If you get a chance to visit, please do. It's amazing. They give tours. They feature the house on First Fridays. They have all sorts of events there. And I am so proud of my colleagues at Historic Albany Foundation. Congratulations to them on a job well done. And it kind of started with a Preserve New York grant. All right, cultural landscape reports. Now, this falls into the same bucket as building condition reports and historic structure reports. It's actually more like a historic structure report, except instead of focusing on the building, it focuses on the landscape. So this is particularly important if you have a historic landscape and you need to make changes, if you need to add parking or change your walkways and driveways, but you want to preserve the historic integrity of the landscape, then you really want to know and have expert guidance in how to do this. If you want to restore old paths and walkways that used to be there and are no longer there, then a landscape architect can help you figure out where they were and how to restore them. These are also useful for interpreting formal gardens or informal gardens, as it were, herb gardens, whatever it is that you're looking to interpret and bring to life for the public. A cultural landscape report can help you do that. This can be the starting point of improving the accessibility on your site, improving parking, improving visitor engagement through walkways and gardens. There are all sorts of wonderful things that can come out of cultural landscape reports. This can also help you plan for grading and drainage work. So, if you're finding that parts of your property, I know one project that we funded in the past, some of their trees began to die out back. And it's because with climate change, the land had changed. And an area that used to be high and dry was becoming really marshy, and it was killing off some of their heritage plants. They needed to know how to deal with this rather than hiring Joe, the backhoe driver, to come and start digging things up right away. They got a cultural landscape report to help guide their work, and it was really valuable. And they were able to remediate that problem. All right. So let's pause here. Most of us know the answer to this question anyway. I'm going to take a look at the questions that have come in to make sure that I'm addressing everything properly. Question is, oh, wow. This is a really good question. Thank you so much. Can the small studies already be started, or do they have to start after the grant is awarded? I should have said this in the beginning as part of our guidelines. We cannot fund studies that are already started or finished. You have to wait until you get the grant to start the study. So these are not reimbursement grants. I urge you to move forward with preservation studies, especially if there's an element of urgency and you need to get things done quickly. Go ahead and self-fund them if you can, but if you can wait for the grant, then wait for the grant and start them after. Thank you for that question. Also, can you talk about matches? Yes, and we are going to do that in just a moment. That is coming up. HVAC study, what category does that fall under? Excellent question. That would fall under energy efficiency studies. I think we previously had that under MEP analyses. Oh my goodness. We'll have to talk about this. It depends on what your goal is. If your goal is energy savings, looking to upgrade your HVAC system for that, then energy efficiency studies. And if your goal is to upgrade your system in whatever way, I realize that's a non-answer. We'll have to talk about this. Stay tuned. Oh my gosh. I am the anonymous presenter, apparently. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Janet Rudler. I'm the Grants and Technical Services Manager at the Preservation League, and I am at your service. I am the person that you will talk to about grants and who will try to answer your questions about grants. And if I can't, I will find an answer for you. Thank you for that prompt. I have a question about leases here. Can a nonprofit that leases from an LLC but has an MOU with a historical society apply? Unfortunately, no. It all comes down to that ownership. Unfortunately, no matter how strong your MOU, no matter how wonderful your historical society is, we can't fund an LLC owned building. I'm so sorry. Try to buy it from them, get them to donate it to you. But unfortunately, we can't. And the reason is site control. So when we're looking at LLCs or other private owners of property, they can do what they want with that property, unlike a 501c3 that actually has a public obligation attached to their nonprofit status. So an LLC can take that building and turn it into a B&B next week if they really want to. Not that they would, but it's about site control. We want to make sure we're investing in projects that are going to serve the public through an arts and cultural organization for years to come. And that's why. All right, so for repairs to existing HVAC. Okay, so that would be an MEP analysis. Thank you for clarifying that. So that would bring in an HVAC professional to assess what needs to be done to make that old system work again within your building. Keep in mind, though, that for your application to be competitive in this grant program, it would have to in some way involve preserving your building. So if that old HVAC system needs to be replaced and you're thinking, how are we going to run ducts in this building? Ducts. Or how are you going to run pipes for hot water baseboard, whatever it is, you're trying to protect your building while you're trying to repair or replace your HVAC. So be sure the professional you hire is, make sure they understand that. Make sure that they are used to working on historic buildings and do good work on historic buildings. Ask for references. If there are other organizations in your area that have used HVAC professionals in their historic buildings, reach out to them and see how it went. So you'd be surprised at how some contractors, they know their stuff, but they don't know historic buildings. And they don't think anything of running their HVAC systems through buildings in any way that they can in order to get the job done. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind the historic preservation needs of your building. I hope that helps. I appreciate everyone's encouragement. Let's see, if an organization is seeking assistance, do ongoing renovations need to stop? And if so, how long might they be delayed? So we don't want to delay your ongoing projects, for one thing. If you run into something during your project and you say, oh, we need to get a professional in to take a look at this and see how to proceed, then yeah, you should stop at that point. If it's something that cannot wait, these grant cycles take a while. You know, the turnaround's about 12 weeks. If you can stop work, then stop work and wait. When you're dealing with a historic building, these projects usually take a lot longer than you think they will, and with good reason. You have to step lightly with historic buildings. So yeah, in most circumstances, the renovation should stop until you get professional guidance to move forward. Would an outside historical structure that is disconnected from the main building but still used for programming be eligible? Yes, that's a great question. So sometimes barns and other buildings are used for your program. As long as they're actively used in your arts and cultural programming and they're a historic building, then yeah, you're good to go. Good question. All right. I think that's all the questions. Let's move on. All right. So if you find yourself needing to convince, my goodness, this thing's touchy today. If you find yourself needing to convince your board, members of your staff, members of the public, why you need a preservation planning grant, why can't you just forge ahead with your renovations without taking the time to hire someone to offer professional guidance? Well, here's a good reason. to get a preservation planning grant. First, a good practical reason, it helps you fundraise for the capital project itself. Every year, we take a look at the REDC grants that come out in New York State. Usually, the governor announces these around the end of the year. We are still in the process of analyzing them from 2025. But looking back to 2024, we were pleased to see a lot of our former grantees represented there with large grants from New York State for their preservation projects. And we're proud to say that those projects, many of them started with a Preservation League grant. So our direct involvement with 13 of those projects resulted in over $4 million in state grants for their projects. That is $41, over $41 from New York State for every $1 that we granted them through one of our little TAG or Preserve New York grants. So these grants are highly impactful, not just for your historic building, but for convincing funders that you have your act together, you have a professional plan for how to preserve your building, and you're ready to move forward with it. So I was one of those people back in the day that said, why do I need this grant? I just want to fix my front porch. That's when I worked for a small museum. I didn't know better. And a friend who had my job before me convinced me that preservation planning grants are the best place to start. And so now I get to spread that word as well. These grants tend to kickstart preservation projects. They're oftentimes the very first step that you take before you begin any repairs or rehabilitations on your irreplaceable historic property. If you need more, more fodder for convincing either yourself or someone else for the need for professional preservation planning, here are some reasons to have this work done first. This allows you to get everybody on the same page, your board, your staff, your contractors, everybody together with a unified vision for your building. This helps you engage the community to gather support. So you can reach out and ask for letters of support to accompany your grant application. And those letters show us that you have community support, first of all, and it gets you ready to approach the community in fundraising. People are generally pretty happy to supply a letter of support when you ask them for it, and they're just glad you're not asking for money, but eventually you can ask them for money. And this is one way to kind of prime them for the project that you're looking at. They're one of your supporters, and eventually you're going to ask for their support. So this helps you engage with the community regarding your historic building and your plans for it. This planning projects also help you create a long-term plan for your building. We know that there's a lot of changeover, a lot of staff turnover at organizations. And from one generation to the next, you want to know what work has been done on your building and what work still needs to be done. So when you have a new executive director come in and you have this document that says, here's what needs to be done in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, then they have something to help guide them during their tenure at the organization. These documents are extremely important, and they really help with succession planning and preservation planning. So last year, we ran Preserve New York and technical assistance grants together in the springtime, much like we're doing now, except we've changed the name to reflect that. We granted $347,500 to 31 projects across the state. And we're extremely proud of this. This helps preservation projects happen. This year, we hope to do the same. So we've got the money available. Oh, this guy. Okay, so if he can do this, you can. So how do you apply for a Preservation League grant once you've decided to do so? The very first step to take is always to read the full grant guidelines. They are available now on our website, updated for this year. We update them every year, so make sure that you read the full guidelines first to gain a good understanding of what you're applying for and what it covers, your eligibility, etc. So once you've read through all 8 pages of our grant guidelines, it's 8 pages, but it's an easy read. It's important. Then fill out the pre-application. There's no obligation with your pre-application. You're getting your foot in the door. You're introducing your organization and your project and your historic resource or building to the league to help us understand what you need to do to preserve that building. And then if you qualify to apply for a grant, I will send you the link to the full application and you can get started. It's always important to talk with your consultants nice and early, get them on board with your project. You may have to call around to several to find a good fit for your building and your organization and your project. We have a list on our website, a digital preservation professionals guide, and I urge you to check that out. It's got a lot of our longtime, very experienced and qualified consultants on it. If you need further assistance choosing a consultant, I'm always happy to help. You'll have a chance to preview the full application before you commit to it. So get your pre-application in as soon as you can, because the more time you have to look at the full application and prepare yourself, the better. So we'll go through all of these steps there. So if you'd like to scan that, that will bring you directly to our full grant guidelines. You can print them out, you can download them to your computer and share them with your team. As I mentioned, these cover all the things you need to know to apply for this grant. It will answer a lot of your questions, I guarantee it. The second step is to submit that pre-application. It's available on our website. If you scan this QR code, it'll take you right there. You'll scan down or you'll scroll down the page and read all about the grant. There are drop-down menus about eligibility, about the types of projects that we fund. There's even a drop-down menu for definitions of all these project types. So I kind of flew through them earlier, but if you want a little more detail, then it's all there on our website. Then you get to the application drop down and you go in there and there's the link to the pre-application. We are accepting pre-applications now through SmarterSelect. This is a change from the past. We usually accept them through a form on our website. We've decided to go with SmarterSelect for the entire process. That way, when it comes time for you to create your full application, you're already in with SmarterSelect and you can just start right away. So when you click on the pre-application link on our website, it will take you to a page prompting you to either create a new account or log in. If you've applied for our grants before through SmarterSelect, you can just sign in with your credentials from before. If you haven't, then you have to click on the Create New Account tab there where the green arrow shows. So, if you have any problems with this process, I'm always happy to help, but it's pretty easy and straightforward. You'll get an email back from SmarterSelect to click on, and then you can go in and create your account. It's quick and easy. It's not terrible, I promise. Once you do that, you can access that pre-application. You can preview the form. It only takes a couple minutes to complete the pre-application. I have actually shortened it this year to make it easier for everybody, only asking what we need to know in order to approve your pre-application. Expect a response from me within about 48 hours. I try to get back to you as quickly as I can. If you don't hear a response from me within 48 hours, please contact me. Because we're doing the pre-applications through SmarterSelect this year, your link will come from an email at SmarterSelect. Check your spam folders. I noticed that if you are using Gmail, your emails from SmarterSelect will go to your Updates tab. So at the top of your inbox, you'll see your primary and then promotions and all that stuff. The Updates tab is where you will find your approval from, or not, from SmarterSelect. So be sure and check all those places. If you still don't see a response from me, please let me know and I will fix that right away. All right, I mentioned talking to consultants early. It's really important to get on their schedule nice and early. Please, please, please don't call them a week before your application's due. They don't appreciate that. And your connection with your consultant is key to a successful project. And this is a relationship that will serve you for years to come. You may go back to them again and again to have them do perhaps the drawings for your project later, things that we don't fund, but things that will help your project move forward. So please, remember that these consultants are very busy. They're really skilled people. They will help you, but you have to get a hold of them nice and early. There are some things that you will have to ask them for. Once they agree to work on your project and you feel that they're a good fit for your organization and project, you'll need their resume and their scope of work for the project, with itemized services and a breakdown of their fees. So, they may say, yeah, I'll do your study. I'll do your accessibility study for $5,000 lump sum, flat fee. That's great. We need to see the breakdown. How are they coming up with that $5,000 figure? How much time is it going to take them to do a site visit, to take photos, to write up the report? What is their hourly rate? Things like that. Because part of what we're evaluating is the quality of the project. Is it a good deal? And I promise you, none of these professionals are going to try to hose you. They tend to be quite generous with their time, but we still need to see that breakdown to see what is entailed. We need to see that scope of work. How are they going to come up with that report for you? I have, yeah, later, I have an example of what you can expect. All right, so when it's time to apply, um, log into Smarter Select using the application link that you receive. You can preview the application. I urge you to do so. If you look close at your screen, there's a little blue preview button there. Click on that. It brings up this pop-up. It's the entire application. You can scroll down through it and see what is ahead of you. Use that to plan your course of action, to compile the uploads you're going to need, the photographs you're going to need, and to help you plan out your narrative answers. One thing that I recommend is that you type out your narrative answers in Word and then either copy and paste them into the application or type them in. But have a copy of your narrative answers separate from the application just in case something happens. Smarter Select's been very reliable over the years with saving our applicants' work. As you go through it, we'll save your work for you, but it never hurts to go to the bottom of the page and click save. Once in a while, you will have to log back in when you do that. It's kind of a pain. But having your narrative answers separate will save you from having your work disappear if your internet goes out or if your electricity goes out. If you don't understand something about the application or the process, please ask me. I realize that it can get a little complicated. We try to keep it simple, but compile your uploads. You'll need a series of uploads for your application. A list of your board of directors with affiliations. That's one thing that I see gets skipped all the time. We need the names of your board members, but also what are their affiliations? Retired from such and such a law firm, or retired teacher, or architect. So we look for conflicts of interest. So we do not want you to hire your board member to be the consultant. That is a conflict of interest. So we need to see your board list with their affiliations, so that we can see what kind of leadership you have, quite frankly. We want to know who's running the show over there. Combine any PDFs ahead of time. So if you have multiple letters of support, you're going to need to combine those into one file to upload them. Keep that in mind, okay? These are things you can do ahead of time. You're working on your application, but it's a pretty light lift. Oh, if you're asking for support letters, from your supporters in the community, and, support letters aren't required for this application, but it really helps us see what kind of community support you have behind you. Ask 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. Give them time to pull it together, but not so much time that they forget about it. Give them a date. I need your letter by such and such a date. And I would make it at least a week out from the deadline so that you'll have those letters when you need them and you won't have to hunt people down. Make sure your photographs are good. So one thing that I see from time to time are photos that chop off the top of the building, or where the building's not really. So try to make your photos straight. Try to eliminate noise. If there are cars on the street, try to zoom past them to get a good photo of the front of the building. So you want to start with an overall view of the building, try to show its context, and then narrow in on the areas of concern. So you're showing your big, beautiful building or your little cute building, whatever the case may be, or your historic resource, which, you know, if it's not a building, whatever, you can ask me what that means. Narrow in on the things that concern you about it. That crack in the wall, the water stains on the ceiling, whatever it is you're hoping to address with this study, show us a picture or two or five. You're required to submit 5. You can submit up to 10 photos. You'll need to provide captions so that we know what we're looking at, and credits. Tell us who took the picture because I will use them in a future slideshow, maybe. So we need to be able to credit them. Remember that the grant panel that is evaluating your application may not have ever been to your site before. And so you want to really tell the story as much as you can through photos. And of course, as I mentioned, we may use your photos in press or on our website or in a future slideshow. So make them pretty, as pretty as you can. Okay, guidelines for budgets. So we're going to ask you to submit an organizational budget as part of your application. Nothing new. Most grant applications require this. It can be simple. A statement of your income and expenses for the year. If your budget is not available yet for the current year, you can use the prior year. But the important thing is to show that you're managing your money well as an organization and show where your match is coming from. So we want to know where that match is. And I'm going to answer that question, 10%. So we have changed the match for our grants to 10% rather than 20%. So making things a little easier for you as an applicant. So we still want to see where it's coming from. It may not be a lot of money, but depending on the size of your project, it may be. So here's a sample organizational budget showing revenue or income, and then expenses, your operating expenses. And at the bottom, you can see the highlighted area showing where they are drawing their match from. There is a question on the application where you can describe where you're getting your match and any additional funds you need to meet the cost of the project. So, you know, if the project's a $50,000 historic structure report, and you're asking us for 20, well, you're going to have to come up with $30,000. So that's more than a 10% match. So you can say, well, we have 10%, you know, here in our operating budget that we can contribute. We also have received donations. We're doing a fundraiser, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll have the chance to explain how exactly you're coming up with all the funding you need to pay your consultant. But under most circumstances, most of these grants, the money we grant pays for most of it. Previously, we would pay up to 80% of your consultant fees. Now it's 90%. So, all right. So project budget. We don't ask you for a separate project budget, but we do ask you to punch in the numbers on the application. We're looking for the project cost. That's the amount of money your consultant needs in order to complete the report or survey. Then you'll have to enter your grant request. So this can be up to $20,000 for large projects, up to $10,000 for those tag studies, previously known as tag studies, or 90% of the project cost, up to $20,000 or $10,000. So, and then your match is going to be the difference. So it's at least 10% that we require. This needs to be a cash match. It cannot be in kind or donated services. Anything like that has to be cash, either in hand or almost in hand, or we have to be reasonably certain that you're good for it. Let's see. I feel like I have probably a question about this. Let's see. I have a few questions. I think 5 have come in. All right. Oh, yes. Questions about the match. Hopefully this helps clear that up. Cash match, 10%. So a little less match than we have formerly required. Can consultants be in-house? Gosh, that's a good question. They can't be on your board. That's a conflict of interest. We can't give you money to pay your board members to do the project. If they want to donate their services and do it for free, it's probably what they should do. Or if you want to do your own in-house fundraising and pay your board member. That's up to you, but our grants cannot pay your board members. So consultants cannot be in-house. Sorry. If you want to expand on that, if it's not something I've mentioned, feel free to get a hold of me and we can talk about it. Does your outside consultant need to be an architect? That's a good question. It depends on the project. We generally recommend a preservation architect for most of these. If it's something technical like HVAC, electrical, things like that, then you're going to need to get a hold of a qualified electrician or HVAC technician, but they should work within historic preservation standards. And if they don't know how to do that, it might help to have a preservation architect involved to help guide the project. So they can make their recommendations, but your preservation architect should sign off on them. That's not always necessary, but sometimes it is. I hope that answers your question. Would a condition report on how to restore Portuguese tiles be considered? That's so specific. Sounds beautiful. Yes, so that would be a specialized conservation study or a limited condition assessment. And I know, which is it? It kind of depends. If you need to have a specific sort of conservationist who specializes in tile to come in and look at this, that would be a specialized conservation study. If you have a preservation architect that says, oh, yeah, I can do a condition assessment on that, then that's fine too. So some of these, as you can tell, some of these categories are a little bit fluid and overlap a little bit. My gut feeling is that this would be a specialized conservation study. And it doesn't really matter. The name doesn't matter so much. It's the project that matters and the consultant that you choose. I hope that helps. All right. What if your organization does not have a formal budget? What? But only has monthly financial reports from your treasurer of expenses and bank balances and investment reports. All right. You need to build your budget from that. So have your treasurer pull together a year's worth, the current year preferably, of your expenses and bank balances and investment reports. How much money do you have there that's available? How much do you use to operate as an organization? Even if you're all volunteer, which I suspect that's what you're saying here, maybe not, but if you're all volunteer and you don't have much of a budget, surely you're paying to keep the lights on, to shovel the snow, or maybe your volunteers shovel the snow, my goodness. Program expenses. So we are requiring arts and cultural programs to be part of this building's use. So surely surely you have expenses relating to your programs. Even if you have volunteer docents running your programs, that's fine too. But you should have some sort of a formal budget. Ask your treasurer to pull something together that just shows your available funds and what you're spending for the year. And if in those bank balances and investments, you have enough money for that 10% minimum cash match, then great. Have your treasurer point that out and you'll be good to go. Can a historic church apply for a study to convert a formal chapel into a public performing arts center? That's a good question. Yes, but okay. So the caveat is what organization is looking to do this? Do they have programming in place now that's taking place somewhere else? Do they have some sort of track record of arts and cultural programming behind them before they convert that church? And I know that sounds like putting the wagon before the horse, but it's a requirement of these grants that there be some sort of arts and cultural programming in place. If it's planned programming, it has to be really fleshed out plans with solid partnerships and again, some sort of track record of programming behind them. That is a wonderful adaptive reuse project. And, certainly a condition study and accessibility study can help further their efforts to convert that chapel into a performing arts center. We can talk about it further. If you want to have the applicant contact me, we can certainly talk about how this might look for a grant application. I certainly hope we can make it work. Submitting the budget in submitting the required budget for the pre-application. Oh, okay. So sorry. Good question. You do not need, we no longer ask for the cost of the project in the pre-application. The reason for that is very few people know that yet. When you're pre-applying, you may not have even talked to a consultant yet, and that's fine. And if you have no idea, don't worry, we're not asking for that information in the pre-app this year. So rest assured, no budget is required to pre-apply for these grants. We just want to know what you're looking to do, and basically a little about your organization, who you are, your building, what you want to do. You don't have to have any numbers for us to pre-apply. The pre-application is to see if you are eligible to apply for the full application, because we don't want anyone to spend hours applying for a grant that you're really not eligible for, or maybe that's not a good fit for your project. So this pre-application is just a really easy way to get your foot in the door and see if you are eligible to apply. All right. Are informal advisors to boards being selected as consultants still considered a conflict? If they're not on your board and they're not a paid staff member, then that should be fine. Yeah, I've seen that situation exactly before, so I think you're good. Does a public library count as an arts and cultural organization? Well, depends on who you ask. Unfortunately, for the purposes of our NYSCA REIT grants, we cannot fund libraries. I am so sorry. I know that sometimes libraries are the arts and cultural conduit in some areas, especially rural areas. I know that you often steward historic buildings that are highly significant. But unfortunately, at this time, we cannot fund libraries. So I'm so sorry. If you want to contact me to see what other alternatives there may be, I'd be happy to talk with you. All right. So it looks like I've got, I think, all of our questions answered. It's past 1 o'clock. I need to get moving on this so you all can get back to work. So we all can get back to work. Here's an example. I promised an example of a breakdown of tasks and deliverables and fees. This is what you want from your consultant. This is what you need for your application. This is the scope of work that includes a breakdown of fees and services. If your consultant says, I'll do this for a flat fee of $5,000, that's great, but you still need to see this. Okay, so you can see their price at the bottom is $6,800, and they summarize exactly what they're doing, how long it'll take, and what their hourly rate is. Now, it may not take them exactly 6 hours to do each task, but this is enough to go on. This is what they know from their experience is going to go into producing this report for you. So I hope this helps. When you're talking with your consultants, I hope this helps the consultants on the call too, to understand what we need. Most consultants are great about providing this. And I think some just don't know. So there it is. All right. So the way that we evaluate your applications is based on a scoring system of our grant partner, the New York State Council on the Arts. This is a tried and time-tested way to make our scoring as fair and thorough as possible. We are looking at 3 criteria. The reason I'm telling you this is because when you're answering your questions on the application, especially your narrative questions, keep these criteria in mind. These are the things that we need to know about your project, about your organization. So if you're not sure what we're asking, please look to these criteria. You will find the answer in here. We're looking at the architectural, cultural, and historic significance of your historic resource. And then under that, you'll see a couple of considerations. These are questions that our panelists will be asking themselves when they're looking at your application. All of this information that you see here, this wall of words, it is included in the grant guidelines. So never fear, I'm going to fly through it, but you will find it in the grant guidelines. You can look at it there. We want to see how appropriate the project is for your building. Is this the right time for that particular kind of study? Is your consultant qualified? Are they the right consultant for the project? Like, you can call anybody on our list. But if they don't usually do projects like this, they'll tell you. those, but you want to make sure to hire the best consultant for the job. We want to make sure that your understanding of the project cost aligns with what your consultant is telling you in their scope of work, and that you punch in the right numbers in those three spots. How much are you asking us for? How much is the consultant saying this project's going to cost? And then how much are you contributing? So just those three numbers. Is the project urgent? Now that's kind of subjective, but if the and plus if it's too urgent, we want you just to fix the problem. If you have rain coming in through your roof, fix that first. Even if it's a temporary fix, put a tarp on it, have it professionally tarped. When I say tarping a roof, I don't mean going to Dollar General and getting a blue tarp and slapping it on. No, have a professional roofer come and tarp your roof. It costs a couple $1,000, but it will save your building, and then you can apply for a grant. So use your judgment, but if there is an element of urgency to your project that makes sense for applying to this grant, then please tell us what it is, and you'll have the opportunity to do so in your application. Also, if you have a unique window of opportunity to get this done, you have funding, or it's just the right time, tell us that, because it matters. We want to see that this will more than likely lead to some important repairs, rehabilitation work for your building. So you'll find those questions in the application where you can convince us that you are ready for this and you can undertake it from beginning to end and pull together the resources needed. Organizational and managerial criterion. This is looking at your organization's ability to do just that, to manage the project, to get it done, and to carry it forward with work in the future. So we want to see that you have a plan in place. What we don't want to do is fund a study that's going to sit on a shelf and gather dust just for the study, just for the sake of having gotten a grant, right? This is only step one in what you need to do for your building. Step one is that preservation study, and we are ready to fund it. So show us that you're ready for it and that you're able to carry it forward. And don't worry, if you're an all-volunteer organization, I have seen some mighty all-volunteer organizations get things done. So we're not going to judge you based on that. We're not going to look at a major museum that has 30 paid staff and access to resources like crazy. We're not going to compare you to them. We're not going to compare them to your needs. This is not based on need so much as it's based on quality. We really want to invest in projects that are going to be impactful, that are going to help your organization carry out your arts and cultural mission. And so, what I'm trying to say is each application is evaluated on its own merit. All right. Service to the public's important. That's the third criteria. This is looking at your programming. So programming is important. This is a New York State Council on the Arts re-grant. Their mission is to improve public access to the arts in any way they can. And this grant program helps them do that with historic buildings. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to save historic buildings and make them accessible to the public, and make sure that your organization can continue to bring your community quality arts and cultural programming through your wonderful historic resource. So we're going to want to know about your programming, both current, past, and planned. The degree of local community support. So we want to see that there's an active and mutual connection between your organization and your community through programs, through being open and welcoming, through your outreach. So, a lot of organizations say, oh yes, we are open to everybody. We let anybody visit. That's awesome. We all do. We want to see you being active and getting out there to know your community and to see how you can better serve them through your programs. So keep these things in mind. You may be at the very beginning stages of doing these things, but we want to see those efforts, and it's going to matter for your application. We do have funding priorities, 2 of them. These are not scored in the way that the 3 criteria are scored, but they are considerations. So applications that meet these priorities will get priority consideration. That's not to say that they're the only ones that we're going to fund by any means. It all comes down to the criteria too. But this is an additional, if you meet one of these, then it gives you a little leg up, additional. So this is also in your guidelines. Be sure and read through it. If you meet these funding priorities, you will have the opportunity to explain how in your application. If you don't meet them, be honest, but it's okay. You don't have to meet these, but if you happen to meet these, we want to fund you. We want to fund all of you, but make sure you make your case. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. When you've got your application together and you're ready to hit submit, please give it a read through first. Is your county correct? The reason I say that is because autofill in your browser might mess up some of those fields. So we ask you for your county, the county where your organization is and the county where your historic resource or building is located. They may be the same, they may be different, but I will tell you that autofill more times than not will autofill it to New York. And we know you all are not in New York County. Some of you are, but some of you are not. Make sure that that's accurate. It messes with our record keeping. So please read through your application. Make sure autofill hasn't messed up your fields. Make sure they all say what you want them to say. Proofread your email address. If you get the grant, we want to get a hold of you, and we will do that through email. So be sure that that's correct. Your mailing address also, that's where we send the check. So make sure that's correct. Your official contact should be the person at your organization who communicates about the grant with us and signs checks. So again, that needs to be accurate. That needs to be a person who knows what the heck is going on with this grant. Are your uploads correct? So what I've seen is that somebody accidentally uploads the wrong upload and we get duplicates in the application, or something's missing and in its place is something that isn't supposed to be there. If you accidentally upload the wrong thing, you will find to your dismay that you can't delete it, but you can replace it. So Smarter Select allows you to replace that wrong document. So keep that in mind. You can replace it with the correct one. And if you have questions, you can ask me. So don't save this to the last, though. Make sure you're uploading your correct files, proofread it, do it well ahead, at least several hours before the deadline, so you have a chance to correct it if it's wrong. And then finally, get another person to look over your shoulder and read the application with you to make sure that it makes sense. All right. Submit it early. Please do not wait till 4:59 p.m. to hit submit, because I guarantee you there will be a glitch. When everybody hits submit at the same time, things go wrong. So make sure that you're giving yourself enough time. Plan ahead. Tell yourself, I'm going to submit this by noon. And then you'll get it in on time. We cannot accept any emailed material. So please, please do not email me anything saying, this wouldn't upload, so I'm emailing it to you. I can say sorry, but I can't put it in your application for you. I cannot tamper with applications. I also don't have a voting score. I do not score these applications. Our independent panel of professionals does that. I can help you put together a good application, but I can't proofread it for you. And I can't add or take anything away from it. So what you submit is what you submit. I cannot do anything about that. So you also can't email, or you can't mail us stuff through the Postal Service. Please don't. So, all right. I hope this has all made sense to you. I'm going to look through those questions once again. I apologize for keeping you over an hour. This is the grant timeline. We are accepting pre-applications through Friday, April 17th, and then the full application deadline is a week later, April 24th. But get those pre-applications in more sooner than later. Please don't wait. We do accept them late for people who, we accept them through April 17th for folks who find out about these grants at the last minute, but yeah, do things early. Turnaround's approximately 12 weeks, so you can expect to hear about the grant decisions in mid-July. Funded studies need to be completed within a year of that grant notification, so keep that in mind. And when you're talking with your consultant, And finally, if you have any other grants, be sure and close them with me before you apply. All right. Later in 2026, here's the bombshell. We'll be looking to fund cultural resource surveys and National Register nomination projects, but there have been some major changes to that program. So that's coming later in the spring and summertime. There will be lots of information available about that coming your way. I just wanted to give anybody who's thinking about those projects a heads up. This information will appear on our website soon. If you have questions in advance, I urge you to get a hold of me. If you're thinking about applying for a PNY grant to fund a National Register nomination or cultural resource survey, we need to talk more sooner than later. So, all right. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Let me take another glance at those questions, make sure I didn't miss anything. It's often difficult to come up with a breakdown when the final amount a group would get is unknown. I suspect this is a consultant, and I really thank you for telling me this. How often do applicants receive the number they provide when they ask for funding? Almost always. For these preservation planning projects, they almost always ask for or get the amount they ask for if it's reasonable. So up to $10,000 for those small tag projects, up to $20,000 for the comprehensive studies. And I know those comprehensive studies can be pretty pricey. So, we want to see that they have the means to come up with the required match to meet your fees. I know it's difficult to come up with a breakdown. Approximate based on your past experience with doing these kinds of projects. But yes, you can pretty much figure that if they're asking for up to 90% of your project costs, it will probably get it. So where can we find the suggested consultant list again? Oh, it's on our website. I may have actually, I don't think I have. Yes, I do. I have a QR code for you. Zap that. That will take you to, that won't take you to the right page, but it'll take you to the website. And let me drop it in the chat. No, we don't have time for that. Get a hold of me if you can't find it. It's on our website. It's the Preservation Professionals Digital Guide. All right, should be right on our homepage. Deadlines for 2026. Yes, I already showed you those. I'm sure you put that question up before I got to that slide. So there you go. All right, thanks everyone. And yeah, if you have any questions outside of this, get a hold of me, Jay Redler at preservenys.org, or you can call me. So the information is right here. Thanks.